want to show you a new and powerful application for education that is now available to you in your Google Suite. So to get to what we call Jamboard, I'm going to go into my waffle and I'm going to look through all of these applications for Jamboard, and it's probably going to be a little further down. There it is. So it's the yellow icon that kind of looks like a J. Now I'm anticipating I'm going to use this one actually quite a bit. So I'm going to just drag it up my listing of apps to be in the top number. You can totally control which ones are your most used ones from your waffle by just dragging them around. So we're going to come over to Jamboard by just clicking on it. And you'll see it looks like all of the other screens that we see in Google, whether we're looking at slides or we're looking at sheets. All I see in here is Jamboards that I have demonstrated. So I want to create a new Jamboard, which is just basically a whiteboard that I can use for teaching. So I'm going to click the plus down here to start a new Jam. And it'll just take a second for it to load my tools. So right now it's called an untitled Jam, and it will remain as such unless I rename it. So let's go demonstration Jam. Oops. And now it's at least got a name. So now that it's loaded, we can see I can open a Jamboard from here if I've got another one that I want to reference. Up here is where I can add more frames, so much akin to the way we used to do things with whiteboards. We can add more sheets or more pages to the whiteboard. And we've got a pen tool here, and if I click on it, it's got that little arrow pointing it out. So there's a few different types of pens that I can use here. I can change the color. So we're going to change it to blue. And I can come over here and I can draw on the screen. So I could use this for teaching. If I was using a touch screen Chromebook right now, which obviously I'm not, I would have much better control in terms of the appearance of my writing. So if I was trying to teach some fraction stuff and reducing fractions, and if I were doing it on a Google Meet for some kids who maybe have been away or for whatever reason we are quarantined, whether it be just your classroom or a larger quarantine than that. This is built now right into Google Meet, so you can quickly pull up a whiteboard screen and you can teach your kids with the visuals as you're talking how to do whatever it is that you are trying to instruct them with. There's the eraser tool. In addition to that, we've got our undo buttons up here. When you're working on a Chromebook, you can look for these little undo and redo buttons, but you should also know that the universal controls for this on your keyboard, Control Z will undo and Control Y will redo. So if ever you're in a position where you can't find those undo buttons, Control Z, Control Y are your friends. Then we've got sticky notes. So if a student had a question or if I wanted them to remember something, I could grab one of these little sticky notes, and don't forget to find the number that the top and bottom can be both divided by. And so now I've got a little sticky note that is added onto my Jamboard, and I can move it wherever I want. I can make it a little bit bigger too. So if I were going to put this on my Google Classroom later for kids to refer to when they're doing their homework, this might be a good way to give them some of these little reminders. Now, I've got a bit of a challenge in that it is behind this writing. So I can take some measures to move it into a place where it is no longer behind the writing, and it can have a home where it's kind of out of the way. It just has to remain on what we see as our sheet of paper. In Jamboard, we can't take things off the stage like we can in slides. This one allows me to add an image. And so when I click on it, I have a few choices. I could upload it if I've got it in that little downloads file. Of course, I can go into my Google Drive and I can look for some images, or I can, if I've just added something into my drive, I can go to the recent content. Obviously, I'm doing some work with the evidence and investigation unit for grade 6 at the moment, as you see by my crime scene images. I can also go back here, and if I do a Google image search, so let's just continue with the forensic unit. And when I do an image search, it's going to bring up what is available to me on Google Images. and it has already filtered them for me to be images that I am allowed to use. So these are all royalty-free or open source images. So I'm going to grab this fingerprint and I'm going to bring it onto the screen. Now you'll notice with the ordering of images that the images always go behind the writing on Google Jamboard. And I do have the ability to control the order, but it does not bring the writing into play. If I drag this down here, it goes over top of that little sticky note. So I can control the order of the items, but the writing always goes on top. So if I want this to appear behind this, I'm going to click on the little kebab here. I'm going to go to order, and I'm going to send the fingerprint image to the back. So now when I drag it over here, it's going to go behind that little yellow sticky note. So I've got a fair number of controls in terms of how I lay things out on Jamboard. Now I'm going to draw some shapes using the tools contained down here. Now you'll note it's got another one of those little arrows that points to the right. And so I can click on that, right on that little arrow, and I get the flyout of different shapes I can draw. So we'll take the circle one, and as long as I drag diagonally, I'm going to get a fairly circular circle. If I want to make an oval, I'm going to drag it a little more either to the left or right, or a little more up and down to get an oval. So you just have to control it. The shift tool doesn't seem to work to constrain the proportions. In lots of programs, when you're drawing shapes, if you want the proportions to remain intact, holding down shift will allow for that to happen, which does not appear to be the case in Jamboard. So just control your drag manually. The next one we'll look at is the text box. And so if I click in, I can type on the screen. So if I were wanting to put some notes for kids, things like that, I could do it. I can make it bigger. I can grab the edge here and I can drag it out to make it all on one line, and I can move it around as I see fit. I've also got the ability to change the colors. There's not tons of choices in there, but this is intended as an instructional tool, not a design tool. And so it does limit the bells and whistles that you have access to. Now, if I needed to go onto another screen, I'm just going to hit that arrow to the right, and that's going to create me a new frame so I can continue teaching whatever the content is I'm teaching, and I can go back to them. And if I click on this, I can see the thumbnails of them. So if I had a whole bunch of slides in my Jamboard, I could skip back and forth fairly seamlessly. The last one I'll mention, because we have to have a few things on the screen for this one to be valid, is the select tool. So that's the gaffer here that will let me move things around. So if I want this circle to come over here, and the things I can't move are my writing, but I can move any of the other assets that I've brought in. So we see again, it goes behind. So I can move this guy over here. Maybe I want to have now that we're done teaching, I'll have the note up here at the top. And yeah, there's a little bit of writing in front of it, but not the biggest deal. I can take the eraser and I can erase that bit of drawing if I want to get rid of it. So the undo and the move buttons, the select tool don't work on the writing, but at any point in time, certainly the eraser does. The eraser does not work on the images you've drawn with the other tools. It doesn't work on photos. It doesn't work on notes. It doesn't work on typing, but it does work on anything drawn. So I'm hoping that Jamboard proves itself to be a useful and viable tool for you, both in your classroom and should we have to make any sort of a return to online teaching, this little tool might be pretty valuable to you. So we just have one question left. Where do I find this later if I need to put it on my Google Classroom or give it to a student? Just like everything else in Google, it's going in your Google Drive. And that's the beauty of this. Certainly there are other online whiteboard applications, but the beauty with Jamboard is that it goes right into your Drive. So if I go over here to Google Drive, I'm just going to go to Recent because that's the last thing I did in Google Drive. And there it is, right at the top of my recent folders, Demonstration Jam. Now, I have not specified that particular Jamboard should be filed in any of my folders. So it is also just in my Google Drive in the regular listing. And now I could drag it into a folder that that I want it to be in as well. So it operates exactly like docs or exactly like slides or exactly like sheets. It's just a new tool available to you to be in your educator toolkit. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks for watching.